This segment is brought to you in part by the Canadian Historical Arms Society, owners of the Genesee Range, the premier recreational sport and training facility in Western Canada. See us online at historical-arms.com.
The Quiet Professional, a podcast about law enforcement, security, justice, and politics. We are digging deeper on the issues and going where the information takes us with access to experts and authorities. Welcome to The Quiet Professional. Hey everybody, welcome back. Nathan Rome is with you. Today, our topic is Canada's national security and culture around this topic, or maybe the lack thereof. For that, I have the hosts of Spies Like Us. See, I told you guys I was going to do this right off the top. First up is Phil Gurski. He's a prior guest on the show. He's got over 30 years as a strategic intelligence analyst, in which he specialized in radicalization and homegrown Islamist extremism. He has worked for several organizations such as the Canadian Security Intelligence Service, or CSIS, and Communications Security Establishment, or CSE. He is also the author of several books, including The Peaceable Kingdom, A History of Terrorism in Canada from Confederation to Present, which we did a podcast on. So I'll put that up in the description because I think people should go back and listen to it and get the book.
More royalties.
And second up, I got Neil Bisson here. He is a retired intelligence officer with the Canadian Security Intelligence Service and a former frontline officer with Canada Border Services Agency. He's also the director of Global Intelligence Knowledge Network and hosts the Global Intelligence Weekly Wrap-Up Intelligence Conversations podcast. With over 25 years of experience in law enforcement and national security, he brings insight into espionage, foreign interference, terrorism, and real-world intelligence collection. And last but not least, or maybe you guys would say least, but he's the third one.
You should have said Phil for that one.
Yeah, we've got Al Treddenick here. Also a former guest on the show. He is retired CSIS and RCMP member, over 30 years of intelligence operations, both domestic and abroad. That experience was mostly in counterterrorism investigations and HUMINT operations. Upon retirement from government service, he joined BlackBerry's government relations government relations division and was responsible for national security issues. He continues as a member of the CACP, IACP, and the RCMP Veterans Association, as well as serving on several corporate advisory boards. And he's currently the president and CEO of ATNOH Group, a global risk and public safety consulting company. And most recently, you're involved in first responder and military veteran mental wellness advocacy and support. So congrats on that too. So welcome, guys.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think Al's bio was the longest. I don't know. I'm kind of
feeling
like
They saved the best for last on that one, I guess. Eh?
Yeah.
Clearly.
Well, at least they got the dig in there, and then we pumped them back up. So
That's right. That's right.
As per usual.
That's to get a big head on this show, let me tell you.
Yeah.
But I do have to say, it looks like I am the quiet professional newcomer to this. So thank you for having me on for the first time, Nathan. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm glad to get you guys on here. One of the things I wanted to start with, just by asking, because you guys have been running your show for a little bit now. I think I might be at my third year, but you did an episode recently with a fan of the show. So I was listening to that one, but I'm wondering, have you guys ever experienced any kind of criticism? Has anybody ever reached out and said, what the hell are you talking about? Or I don't know, maybe just whatever you said is completely wrong. Like, do you get any of that kind of flack from people?
Okay,
so let me
let
me do this. Yeah, one of the first Q&As shows that we did, a person had written in, and we had done most of our shows on the foreign interference and the threat that China presented to Canada, and this guy, I don't read the last names on the air, but the guy's name was Ewan, and the only comment he had was, "You guys suck."
To the point.
So I guess we hit a nerve.
Now, we looked that name up. I think that guy's actually a part of the Chinese Communist Party, which, that makes a lot of sense, I suppose.
Or the United Front.
Yeah. So you're doing good.
Probably that.
He's certainly entitled to his opinion, I mean, it's like, the thing is, when you open yourself up like we do at Spies Like Us, you invite both positive and negative feedback. And I think we put that in the negative feedback category.
I would think.
Oh, I thought we were going to work. That was something to work on, to not suck as much. I thought that was like
Yeah.
constructive criticism there.
So, well, one of the things I do is like, I keep all as much as I can, I keep the positive and the negative stuff. I don't get too much negative. So it's actually been okay. But I do keep that as just kind of a reference. And I go back and I look at some of the stuff. Even now, I go back, it's like 3 years, and it's just interesting to see kind of what people criticized or what they liked, and then where you've kind of gone from there. So yeah, I just always wondered that, because I mean, when I started this podcast, one of the things that people didn't do was talk openly. Like they thought, oh my God, a cop's going to have a podcast. It's going to be whoever that gimmicky guy was with like wearing all the costumes. I think he was a Mountie. They thought it was going to be something like that. But no, it's like we need to put more out there. And this will kind of lead into our first, one of the first things I wanted to get to was about the culture and the education and how we talk about a lot of the issues that you guys talk about. So how do we get that across to people at a civilian level? How do we make it so it's understandable, digestible? Maybe I'll start with just asking, like, what are your thoughts around that? Are we doing a good enough job? Is there more to be done? And if so, where? How do we do that?
You know, I'm going to jump in really quick here and just say
Neil,
that you ask yourself, is it a top-down problem or is it a bottom-up problem? Because politicians, and we saw this happen during the foreign interference, they neglected a lot of information that was being provided to them about what is important about national security. And I know the only reason why I jumped in first here, Phil, is because I think a lot of the stuff that I'm going to say is probably similar to all of us, how we feel. And one of the reasons why we started doing Spies Like Us was because we felt that as former intelligence professionals, much like yourself being a law enforcement professional, Nathan, we could help bridge the gap between what is not being talked about within the federal government and what Canadians could and should know about national security and intelligence collection. So the really hard part of this is, are we doing enough? Is the government doing enough to ensure that people are aware of what's important when it comes to national security and intelligence collection? And our answer, because we do the podcast every week, is no, not enough. And this is why we can talk about it unbiased, unfiltered, and as former intelligence professionals, basically give our interpretation of what's happening so that individuals in Canada and around the world don't look at it like, oh, well, is this just the government trying to make themselves look good, or are they hiding things, or are they trying to sugarcoat the message? We're not doing that. We're giving people exactly what they need to know, what we feel they need to know, so they can make those informed decisions about it.
Yeah, it's a work in progress, right? It's I think we are making some headway. The feedback we get from our shows that it is increasing a little bit.
Aside from you suck.
Yeah. Minus the you suck.
Yeah. Well, there's been a couple of other ones like that too, but yeah, I think we're moving forward on this, but it definitely is the education. And I think it's from both ends. It's from the government side, but it's also from the general public side.
Guys, I'm thinking back to when we came up with this idea. So we've just finished 2 seasons, Nathan, of Spies Like Us, 2 complete seasons. We take the summer off because we're all at the cottage or whatever kind of thing. But maybe we were drunk. I don't remember where we were, how we come up with it. But the bottom line is that, as Neil said, and I've said this, and former directors Alcock and Fadden have said this, we have a piss poor intelligence culture in Canada. We have governments of either political stripe that don't understand intelligence. They don't understand its usefulness. They don't understand its strengths and limitations. We saw, as Neil said during the Hogue inquiry, stuff that CSIS has been saying for 30 years on China's interference, completely ignored, or in worst case scenario, sent back for rewording because it was inconvenient. So, as Neil said, and I'll say, what we're doing with Spies Like Us, we're just having a simple conversation with average people. We're not highfalutin academics. We're not theorists. We're just former professionals. We want to have an honest conversation about issues that we worked on that are still issues, and explained it in a way that the average person can understand. And as Al said, their feedback so far has been good because there are no holds barred. First of all, we tear a strip off each other every episode, which was a lot of fun. But we're talking about real issues in ways that people can grasp. And to the best of my knowledge, I don't see a heck of a lot out there. Aside from your podcast, Nathan, that does it at a similar level. It's very highfalutin. And
agreed.
We're just 3 guys in a virtual bar having a beer talking about national security, and that's why it resonates.
Yeah.
And the interesting thing is, one of the feedback segments that we got was from a practitioner, actually, an intelligence officer, who said that you guys are saying the things that we can't.
Can't say.
Yeah.
That was interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's kind of the feedback, I guess I would say, that I've received from the policing side, like the current people that are officers on the street, all the way to communications. Like and this is across Canada. Like it's a lot of the messaging that I was finding on this side of things was it's like the videos out there with handing out the water bottles and giving hugs and all that stuff, and it's like, okay, there is a time and a place for that, but that is not all of it, and there are serious issues that we need to deal with, and I didn't find that was getting talked about. It wasn't getting put out in that regular messaging, and I thought it was a disservice, the word I would use, a disservice to the public, to not show them what's going on in their own backyard. And it is as close as your own backyard, because, being a Mountie, you can end up arresting your neighbor for all kinds of things. And, in the big city, it's a little less like that. But I mean, you never know who's next to you. And then working in gang unit, when I'd walk through venues, I'm going through the most mundane, like normal lounges and stuff where you see families or there's people in there that, it's just regular folk. And then there's a murderer sitting right next to them. But all they see is the police talking to a person. For the last like 3-4 years, they just blame it because it's minority or something like that. But you're like, no, there's a whole bunch of intelligence collected on this person. We know stuff about this person, and they're eligible to catch a bullet any second. You don't want them sitting next to you and your family. So it's just, why was that not getting put out there? One of you mentioned on the politician side, it might have been you, Neil. I think that's where a lot of this disservice is done, is when we talk about intelligence and law enforcement. I think a lot of it for the last several years has just been used as a political tool, more so than a national security issue, a public safety issue. So I'm
Big time.
curious to get your thoughts when you talk about the politicians and the political side. How do we get them to care about a certain issue? Is that just the individual, dependent on the individual? Is that something that, we could push up more? Maybe there needs to be more separation between these organizations like CSE, CSIS, RCMP, and the federal government.
Wow.
I know that's something that's come up in discussions. So
these are great questions. I mean, one thing that worries me, and we're seeing it big time south of the border now, the politicization of intelligence, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where the president is basically firing everybody who disagrees with him. He fired the director of NSA, fired FBI agents, all kinds of stuff. We saw politicization here in Canada, Nathan, with the Hogue inquiry. As I mentioned, in all of my time in intelligence, I never once had a government official said, "I don't like what you wrote, rewrite it."
Rewrite it.
I mean, you give them the best that you've got based on your sources. You corroborate your sources. You assess it for reliability. You say, look our role is advisory. This is what we know. You might want to know this too to make better decisions and policies. But to have just say, well, I don't like what it says. The prime minister won't like this, and then have the prime minister accuse you of being a racist for suggesting that China's interfering in our elections. It really, first of all, it saps the morale of the organizations that are doing this. Why do I bother doing this? It's not going anywhere. But to your question as to what we can do about it, unfortunately, there are no easy answers. And again, it goes back to the fact that we live in a country where intelligence is not appreciated as it once was. I would argue, like during the Second World War, Canada was amongst the top in the world in terms of intelligence gathering, both for tactical purposes and strategic purposes. And we've kind of been asleep at the switch for a long time. And so the professionals that work at CSE and the RCMP Security Service and then the service know what they're doing, but it's trying to get the attention of people downtown. And you mentioned, politics is politics. And, ministers are ministers. And, when you bring people as ministers who know nothing about national security, no background in it, well, what do you expect them to do with the intelligence they're being, you need people below them that do have the professional experience and say, sir or ma'am, you need to read this and understand it.
But the politicians aren't going to do anything about it until the public starts pressuring them. And you just look at the example in the public safety side, with all the stolen vehicles ending up in Africa and Asia, coming out of, and I'll use Toronto and the GTA as an example, until the public in that area started pressing the politicians to do something about it, nothing was being done. It was just another stolen vehicle, and away it went. Now the police have the resources, they have the organization now, the
task force.
CBSA on board. Yeah. So it's like until the public starts pressing the politicians, nothing's going to get done.
I think the politicians, and then even when you look at like law enforcement, maybe the intelligence agencies, they should be the ones leading the conversation and telling the public, this is what you need to be worried about. But I find we're just so reactive. We're always on our heels. And then it's like, on the law enforcement side, it's putting out fires and dealing with crisis. And then on the political side, it's pandering for votes. And it's like, well, what's going to get me the next seat?
Yeah.
And it's like, instead of just being a leader at the forefront of it and saying, here are the issues and this is why we need to tackle it and be educated on it. It just seems like they don't care. Sorry, Neil. Yeah, you were going to go ahead.
No, that's okay. I was just going to add a couple of things to what Phil and Al had mentioned and what you had said too. Going back to what you had talked about earlier, you had mentioned the fact that a lot of the reasons why you're doing this type of thing is to let the public know that, you might be sitting by someone who's dangerous, and you should know that. That's important for you. Myself, Al, and Phil are also talking from a perspective of intelligence professionals who aren't, much like law enforcement individuals, aren't getting their due. They're trying, they're doing amazing work, amazing efforts, and getting no credit for that. And as Phil had mentioned, that is so demoralizing. So us, like, if you really want people to start paying attention to what's going on, there is this swell of law enforcement and intelligence professionals and public servants who realize that, you know what, I may work for the federal, provincial, or municipal government, but they have a responsibility to me as well. So when we're out there trying to share this type of information for people that are across all of those, including just regular citizens, it helps to show that this is a collective effort. So when you go back to your politician, whether it be your municipal, provincial, or federal politician, you say, hey, listen, you need more resources and money and time put towards this because this is important to me. That's when they listen. So when you start putting that pressure so that they realize that this is a valid issue, this is an issue that's going to make a difference when they decide to get votes or when their party is looking to gain or acquire or maintain power, that's when they're going to start listening to you. And here's another example. So tariffs in the United States. All of a sudden this happened and everyone's like, oh, well, how come we didn't know about this? How come economically we're not prepared for this? How come we have all these provincial borders that are put up that are preventing us from sharing across? This has to do with the fact that even though you were given information that told you that you should be doing something about this, you ignored it because it wasn't a ballot issue. It wasn't an issue that was going to get you elected. But now all of a sudden, because you weren't proactively looking at things or taking information from those individuals that are providing it to you, now you're trying to figure out and you're scrambling. So this is a great example of be forward thinking and be proactive instead of reactive, because this is where Canadian politicians, Canadian business, and Canadian citizens are unfortunately falling. We just think we're so insulated because we have oceans on both sides of us. We had a great neighbor to the south of us. We got the Arctic to the north of us. All of that stuff is disappearing. And Canada is built up of diaspora communities that have their own interests. But there is a national interest that has to be brought up. And when it comes to law enforcement and national security and intelligence collection, that's our job right now.
Nate, if I could pick up on the whole public education part. So I don't know how many of you saw the interview. It was on CBC, I believe, with the RCMP official about the arrest in Quebec. It was whether she was assistant commissioner. I don't know what level she was. One of the more frustrating things to see. And that I understand she can't say, it's an ongoing investigation. Charges have been laid. You would understand this, Nathan, as a law enforcement officer. You got to be pretty well go stum once the arrests are made because you don't want to jeopardize the trial down the road, right? I mean, I get that. But so with spies like us, we're formers. We don't have access to ongoing investigations. We don't have access to ongoing intelligence, but we've been at the coalface for, amongst the three of us, like 90 years collectively. We can have a conversation with Canadians, right? We can say, this is what this probably means. We were involved in something similar 10 years ago, 15 years ago kind of thing. That's why I think what you do, what we're doing is so important for the Canadian public, because they're not going to get it from serving officials because they can't. They're not going to get it from the government because it's a CYA moment. We don't want to say anything that makes ourselves look bad. we don't have an agenda per se. We're not trying to advance our careers, get to ADM level, whatever kind of thing. We're just three guys in a virtual bar who spent time in security intelligence for a long time. And I would like to think, maybe present company excluded, we have some kind of credibility, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because we've actually done the job. And
yeah,
I see it. I know Alan and Neil shared this. We see ourselves as kind of educators for the Canadian public on what actually this is all about, what it's like to work in security intelligence, law enforcement, what kinds of things you're involved in, and to Neil's point, why this matters, why Canadians have to pay attention to this, and you're not getting a message that's been filtered through. Everyone knows every government department has like how many layers of communications, right? Everything has to be approved to be yin-yang. There's no filter on Spies Like Us. We make it up on the fly. And therefore, it's not been vetted by anybody, which makes it kind of humorous at times. But it also, it's very honest and it's very raw. And I think that's what Canadians have to hear.
I just want to remind everybody, even though the bar is virtual, the beers are real. So
Yeah.
Absolutely.
just so everyone knows.
I was thinking we should have had beers on this one too, but I thought about it too.
It's
like,
9 o'clock in Edmonton, for Christ's sake. Nathan, if you're drinking 9 o'clock in the morning in Edmonton, we got things to talk about.
It's Edmonton. Of course, we're drinking at 9 o'clock.
Okay.
It's Edmonton.
Yeah.
Come on.
I was gonna say, I'm just joining half the population here. So when we talk about the education, trying to get that base layer educated and get them kind of moving in a certain direction. I've seen some of the stuff that CSIS has put out. They put out like little bulletins here and there on LinkedIn or different news things. I thought that was really good. I don't know if that's new. It just seemed new to me. Like I just started kind of picking up on that. And I was like, wow, okay, this is good. They're putting things out. And one of the things I've been working on, and this was by extension from this podcast, was getting connected into one of our local universities and getting at those young adults as they're transitioning kind of into the workforce, and some are in these law enforcement programs. And it's like, well, where can we have the most impact? And people that'll be able to understand it. It's like, I don't expect them to talk about national security to elementary kids. Maybe they do that in China or Iran. Like, they're out there protesting at 5 years old. But for us here, I think certainly at that level of the younger adults, and you start catching them as they're getting interested in certain fields, that is probably one of the main places that I saw an impact. And it's been really cool just getting people in front of the law enforcement professionals. And I've got a couple other courses I'm looking at developing over there, but having guys such as yourselves like go in there and speak in front of these people, I don't know, that's just kind of my thought. I thought that was one of the best places to start. I think you guys have spoken on courses and different things too. What are your thoughts?
So one of the things we're doing, we have a CSIS veterans association. It's called the Pillar Society, and we have members now that are going out and talking at different forums and events.
Okay.
And talking about national security issues. So we've just kind of really started that up, and we want to expand that along the way. But that's all part of it. It's that education piece. And you're right, the material coming out of the service now, the volume of material coming out of the service is new.
Yes.
Okay.
The other thing is the use of social media. And that's where the new generations are getting most of their information from. And that's where we have to be out on podcasts such as this, but the agencies have to be out on it as well.
Mm-hmm.
The one thing I found too, Nathan, is so I started podcasting a decade ago when I retired from the service. I've talked to hundreds and hundreds of Canadians who've seen me on TV or read a blog or podcast, asking me, how do I get a career in CSIS or CSE? So the message is getting out there. And so I wouldn't call myself a mentor. I just say, here's some things you want to think about.
Mm-hmm.
Here's the types of careers that are available. Here's the steps you need to take. And I can honestly say, I'm not claiming any credit for it, but 2 or 3 have actually been hired. Now, I'm not saying that because of me. In fact, they probably denied knowing me when they went through their interviews. But
they did.
A lot of people, I hope so. A lot of people have said, if it hadn't been for you, I wouldn't have even known CSIS existed or CSE existed. So we need to do a much better job like you're doing on campuses, whether it's college or university, to get the message out. These are great careers. They're fascinating work. They need good Canadians to do it. And if we can foster that mentality that people might want to look in that direction for what they want to do post-secondary or post-secondary, that's only a good thing. Because we're all just, the 3 of us are just old retired guys in a bar. we need good Canadians to pick up, the ball after we dropped it several times when we were working. And if we can get the message out, then so much the better.
And the other thing is too, a lot of us are involved in education at one level or another. Anyway, Phil at one time was part of the University of Ottawa. I'm teaching courses at the University of Ottawa.
Yeah.
We're getting out there in different ways and doing different things. Al's been involved in a lot of community stuff when it comes to the mental health of first responders. So even though, like, we get to, one of the reasons I think why we gel so well together on our podcast, Spies Like Us, is because this is a big part of our lives outside of just that podcast, and the fact that we're retired intelligence professionals, as opposed to, just retirees who aren't doing anything with their spare time. I recently had an opportunity to go on a podcast called True Spies, which is out of England, and talk about some of the more clandestine aspects of being involved in an intelligence organization. And I did that because I wanted to focus on, for lack of a better term, the sexier side of what it's like to be intelligence officer. And that, people, they watch the James Bond movies and they see what's going on Netflix specials. They don't realize that when you have a job within the Canadian federal government, you can get positions that will give you that level of excitement. Now, it's not every day, but I mean, this is what gets people interested in a job involved in national security or intelligence collection. They see these types of things, they hear these podcasts, and they're like, hey, I never really gave any thought to that. The same as working in law enforcement. Yes, there are certain parts of the job that are a little bit, drudgery, but there are also really great opportunities to give back to your community and be involved in some very exciting situations.
Yeah.
Are you part of the recruitment process there?
What's that? Am I
Is that something we should know about?
No, you know what? All I'm saying is that if I had an opportunity to work with two great guys like you, I mean, how can you not want to promote that job? Come on.
Hang on.
They're hired for staffing.
Full disclosure, Neil is not the new James Bond. I mean, look at him, for Christ's sake. He's not going to be the next guy, the next James Bond actor. But Neil raises a good point. I mean, the reason why I'm spending so much time with these two knobs in this virtual forum is that the careers we had are more than careers; they're vocations. Do this. It's not.
You can see now why Phil was stuck behind a desk, right? Not actually talking to people. You see that?
Ouch! Wow.
This is why no one lets me talk to anybody.
I was making a profound point. Now I've forgotten it. No,
telling you I didn't look like James Bond.
He was complimenting you.
Yeah, I was. Yeah,
backhandedly, as Phil does.
I think working in law enforcement intelligence is different than an average 9-to-5 job, in the sense that you don't leave it when you leave at 5. You guys as IOs, and I remember accompanying IOs on source meets. You'd meet a guy or whatever at God knows whatever hour, whenever it was convenient, kind of thing, and you took your work home with you, not literally but figuratively. And as somebody who worked as an analyst, you're always thinking when, what's going to happen tomorrow, and what do I need to bone up on, and what is it that I have to know to better understand the intelligence that I'm receiving, kind of thing. And now that's been 10 years out. I've been retired for 10 years and 2 months now. I'm still doing it. I mean, I'm writing books, I'm doing blogs and podcasts, I'm doing media. It's like a passion. It's like I said, it's something that you don't just, once you check out, and no disrespect to factory workers, but when you check out your car the last day, you park it behind you, and then you go golfing or whatever. You go to Florida for 6 months a year. It's not like that. And I'm not saying that all ex professionals are like this, but we've decided, the three of us, that this is important enough. And because of the things we talked about before, a lack of knowledge, a lack of appreciation, the real vacuum when it comes to understanding what national security is all about, we decided we're going to keep doing this to try to provide that context.
Well, I think that's a bit of the issue that has come up, is that's kind of the narrative around policing, law enforcement, maybe, and then intelligence and so on, is it's not considered a calling anymore. It is literally, it's just a job. Like, leave it all behind. It's like, well, I get that to an extent. I think we don't have to say they're mutually exclusive. It's like, yeah, you leave certain things behind, but if you want to be really good at your job and this type of work, you do need to be on the clock a little bit while you're off the clock. And that's just the nature of it. But we've kind of made it where, like, I know just from my own experience, a lot of people come into work and it's like they're just there till the time runs out and they're collecting that paycheck. And it's sad.
We're in golden handcuffs, waiting for retirement to happen, right?
Yeah. So I think it's more a generational shift in the work-life balance. I think that's what we're seeing now, and that's why you're seeing it, because it's not just law enforcement or first responders that are seeing this, but the intelligence community is seeing this, the military is seeing this. It's like, okay, how do we keep that new generation or the successive generations engaged to that point where it becomes a calling again and not just a job? How do we do that?
That's where I think that largely falls on the politicians. I mean, you got the most airtime, you've got the broadest reach, and people are looking and listening for you to give them some direction. Where is this country going? What's important to us? What do we need to focus on? Now, obviously, things kind of trickle down from there. But as we were saying earlier, a lot of stuff has passed to them for the last bunch of decades, I guess, and they're not listening and they don't think it's important. So that all goes by the wayside. And now we're kind of caught flat-footed. One of the things I did want to mention just on the narratives there is there was a recent piece by Stephen Nagy, and I've seen it on LinkedIn and it's posted in a few spots, but just talking about certain rhetoric that's being used. And again, this goes into what's important now and what should we be focused on. There's a lot of people kind of from our communities that are screaming like China is a problem. We need to focus on China. But as soon as this U.S. tariff stuff comes up, there's a lot of rhetoric that U.S. is our biggest threat. There's a bunch of polls now that I just posted yesterday or the other day about just talking about Canadians now. When they get polled, they think U.S. is our biggest national security threat, our biggest economic threat. It's like, we need the leadership to correct that. Like it's there. There's always been tariffs. There's always, they weren't just created for Trump. He just wields them a lot differently than a lot of others. But there are issues, but I wouldn't say these are threats in the sense of, what China is doing to us, what India is doing to us, Iran. So, how do we kind of combat that? Is it just through the mediums that we're using, the podcast? Is there a way we could kind of get the message out? And go ahead, Phil.
Let's bring it back to the politician level, Nathan. And something that Al said, I think, really resonates with me. So I retired in 2015. What I noticed under the previous government, so the Trudeau government, was this notion that CSE, CSIS, the RCMP, it's just another government department. So what you saw happening is you always see movement amongst agencies, right? So if you're a deputy minister of fisheries, we're going to move you over to transport kind of thing.
Yeah.
What I found happening, and this is what I can't accept, I think it's a very, very bad move, is that because you're a deputy ministry of fisheries, you can become the deputy director of CSIS. Because it's just it's the same level job. It's an EX, pick a number kind of thing, right? And I'm sorry, it's not. And even in the SIGINT world where I started my job, I mean, SIGINT is really complicated. So, being a DM at fisheries does not qualify you to be the deputy chief of CSE. It actually takes some brains and some experience in the area. Now, historically, in those organizations, the promotions were all from within, and there's pluses and minuses to that, right? You get the experience, but you get the old boys network that Al was talking about. That's not always the greatest thing. But I think the last government did Canadians a huge disservice by trying to pretend that security, intelligence, and law enforcement was just another government department. And we're going to fill it with whomever is up for promotion this week. Let's put them in there, and they'll bring our agendas there. And further to Neil's point, that has affected morale. When you know the person running the place doesn't know shit from Shinola when it comes from law enforcement or security intelligence, it affects your ability to do your job. And so I'm hopeful, fingers crossed, we have a new government, a new prime minister. Maybe they're going to get this a little better. I'm not going to bet the mortgage on that if I had a mortgage.
I'm going to say I doubt it with that Gary whatever guy. He's not doing a good job so far.
Gary whatever guy.
Hello guy. I don't know how to say his last name.
Hey, I did a poem about Gary, and I found a rhyme for his last name. Okay, so you should listen to the poem I wrote about Gary. But that just really no poems. But you raise a good point. I mean, what message are you sending when you appoint a minister of public safety who states from the outset, there's certain files I don't want to see because it might be a conflict of interest, and there's credible allegations by the service and other agencies that he had some kind of relationship with not one, but two listed terrorist entities. And this guy runs the show.
Yeah.
But even if he doesn't have those connections, the point is he's filling that position. He's got full responsibility. You can't just cut and paste what you want to see, what you don't want to see.
Mm-hmm.
You take that position, you exercise that authority on all of it, not just part of it. And if you can't do it, you shouldn't be in that job.
Yeah. We made the analogy with that because Neil apparently worked at Burger King like eons ago, and we said like it's although he didn't have.
I question that he doesn't know about the paper crowd.
Okay, it was a
he
cover
didn't know about the paper crowd.
Everybody has to work cover at some time.
I think
it was like 21 Jump Street Burger King style.
I think he worked at Burger Queen, but that's a whole other issue we don't want to get into.
Oh boy, but come on!
I think you were UC as a burger wrapper.
Yeah.
Imagine you get hired by Burger King and you say, "Well, I won't serve burgers because I'm vegan." You probably wouldn't get the job for very long. Now we have public safety minister says, "Well, I'll be public safety, but I don't want to talk about Tamils."
Mm-hmm.
I'm pretty sure the way you put it to me, Phil, was, "Can you make burgers at Burger King and not deal with hamburgers?" And I was like, "Well, I guess if I worked in New Delhi, I could." But that's a whole different set of circumstances. Anyway, going back to what you guys are talking about, I just wanted to jump in here really quick, Nathan, before they get out of control, which they have a tendency to do. You had mentioned something along the lines about how do we deal with the generations that are coming up that are only looking, and Al brought this up too, how do we deal with the generational gap where people are looking at positions not as careers, but as stepping stones to something else? And one of the things that some of our Five Eye partners do, but I think works out very well, is that if you want to stay within an operational stream as an intelligence officer and not worry about working your way up the ladder managerially or into the executive level, so you get more responsibility, more pay, all the other kind of stuff, you will continue to accelerate your pay level year after year after year. You're not capped. So what this does is it maintains that level of interest from a financial perspective, because sometimes people will jump out of an operational stream because they're like, you know what, I've got more financial responsibilities now. Yeah. I don't want to travel as much. I don't want to do this. I don't want to do that. With the Canadian government, and this goes back to what Phil was saying too, is that you can't treat the intelligence and law enforcement organizations the same as you would other organizations, because they do a different type of job. And when you start accepting that, and this isn't about elitism. This isn't about, hey, listen, you know what? I'm an IO and I work for CSIS, so I deserve something better, something different.
You haven't told me that for 15 years, for Christ's sake.
But it is recognizing the fact that it is a different job, and the government has to do that. And that has to be positions like the National Security Intelligence Advisor. These appointed positions have to be individuals who have done the job. Not, you know, it looks good if I take someone from this demographic and I make them this position. It looks good if I take this person from this demographic and I make. You have to let that go. The individuals who should have those jobs should be the ones who understand the way it works.
So further to Neil's point, real quickly, Nathan. So the reason why I ended up at CSIS after 17 and a half years at CSE, I was a linguist at CSIS.
I didn't watch anymore.
Well, there's that. I overstayed my welcome. I worked in 10 languages at CSE. I was a really good linguist. And yet my career couldn't advance because I had to become a manager, which I tried and I hated. I worked with a guy, no exaggeration, had 24 languages that he could work in. And yet he maxed out very early because he didn't become a manager. CSIS said to me, "We don't want you to be a manager because you're an idiot as a manager. We want you for your knowledge on the Middle East and on Iran." So they said, "We'll pay you whatever it takes to bring you over here," which I did. So I went to CSIS and ended up essentially retiring as an EX1 equivalent, but with no managerial responsibility. As Neil said, you've got I worked with some amazing mathematicians at CSE, some computer scientists, people that really knew their stuff. Pay them whatever it takes to retain them, because you're not going to find these people on the street in a heartbeat. But the way the government works is that, well, no, you have to become, a manager and then an executive and an ADM. And I'm sure it's the same in law enforcement, right?
Yep.
You want the people who are really good. And the other beauty about this is that very few people want to do the same thing for 30 years. They love it. They're good at it. Pay them what it takes to retain them, because these people don't grow on trees, right? They're very, very rare. And I don't think the government gets that system. But luckily the service did. And there were a couple of us that were not IOs, Neil, that were senior analysts. They said, whatever it takes to keep you guys, we're going to pay you, because we can't replace you, over the weekend kind of thing.
Yeah, law enforcement has seen the same thing with the cybercrime units when they stood them up, and they send officers in for training. They work a couple of years and then they move on. Part of it is the retention, and just like you were saying, Phil, you've got to have that stream where you can reward these people for staying in the same positions. There's got to be a vision in there, and I think slowly law enforcement is getting that in the cybercrime side, where they're bringing in almost like in the RCMP we used to have special constables and civilian members doing investigative jobs. Well, they're kind of bringing that back now.
Yeah. So, even in law enforcement, like at a very basic level, a constable is a constable. You're just a number. And you could be a constable who comes in, collects your paycheck, you contribute nothing outside of the bare minimum. And then you have the guy next to you who's got, he's got carbine training, taser training. He's doing the vehicle tactics. So there's extra training days for that. He's going out to all the highs, getting into more trouble, gets more complaints just for simply showing up to do his job. But you get paid the exact same. And it's like, we're not all equal, unfortunately, to break it to some people.
When I first started with CBSA, it was a very similar situation because I would make the derogatory comment is that some officers were basically welfare in a uniform. They showed up and did nothing.
Yeah.
They didn't. All they wanted to do was get a paycheck, read their paper on the primary line, never look in a car, and never do any law enforcement. And the problem with that is it demoralizes the other officers to say to themselves, well, why am I busting my hump to try to make a difference here when nothing is changing and these people aren't being reprimanded. And sometimes that can be a negative thing when you talk about the union environment. It's great when the union is working for the workers. And if you have an individual who's ambitious and trying to get somewhere and do something, and they're willing to stand up for them and help them out. But the unfortunate thing is there's the flip side to that. Yep. And if you're burnt out, if you're not doing your job, if for whatever reason you are just not productive, it's got to be addressed. And the problem is when there's too much deadwood in any organization, it means that you're just ripe for something to go terribly, terribly wrong. Yeah.
One of the topics I want to ask you guys about, it's slightly switching gears, but a foreign intelligence service. So I know this has come up on your show.
We love that topic.
Well, I kind of wanted to look at it from why doesn't Canada have one? Should we have one? It seems to me like everybody else is playing in this sandbox except us. Everyone else is in our country, but we're not doing it anywhere. So, what's the deal with this? Why aren't we taking part? Is this just because we want to still be the nice Canadians, or?
That's the $1 million question, Nathan. Yeah. $1 million question.
Yeah. You got another hour, Nathan?
Yeah, really.
We could do 5 more shows just on this one.
I've got 15 minutes for Phil.
Okay, I'll start really quickly. So when I was at CSE, I worked nothing but foreign intelligence. Okay, because CSE has a foreign intelligence, but it's SIGINT. It's signals intelligence. It's not HUMINT. Okay, and it still has that mandate. Although I hear from sources it's not nearly as important as it used to be, which I think is a real tragedy. The service, of course, does have a foreign intelligence mandate. It's called Section 16 of the CSIS Act. But when CSIS was created out of the old RCMP security service back in '84, the minions at the time, for the reasons you just said, is the polite Canadian, right? Let's not offend anybody. God forbid someone gets offended by a Canadian. We're gonna limit our foreign intelligence activities to within Canada, which kind of is an oxymoron because how can it be foreign if it's within Canada? Yeah. But anyway, that's a whole other story. I think it's there's 2 large reasons. One is Canadian reluctance to do anything that's maybe slightly controversial. And secondly, we've been sucking at the foreign intelligence teat for too long. We were getting lots of F5 from our partners, from the Americans, from the Brits. Mm-hmm. And as a consequence, we didn't think, in the same way that I think Al or Neil mentioned, we've been, relying on the Americans for so long, the world's longest undefended border, defense. Why spend money on foreign intelligence when we've got the Five Eyes relationship where we're getting it handed to us on a silver platter anyhow? But the 3 of us are in a complete agreement. We need a HUMINT service, a HUMINT foreign intelligence service. The service can collect intelligence abroad, provided it's security intelligence related. So if it's threats to Canada, what people don't realize under Section 12 of the CSIS Act does not say within Canada. CSIS can go anywhere to collect intelligence on counter-espionage, counter-terrorism, whatever. It's only foreign intelligence that's limited to Canadian borders. If you took out the within Canada clause from Section 16 and mandated and resourced it properly, CSIS has the full ability to provide foreign intelligence. It would require more resources, though, and a willingness on the government to let them do that in the first place.
Yeah, and they have to realize the value added that FI will give policymakers. If they don't realize that, it won't happen.
That's kind of the question I was going to ask is, do you think it'd be more beneficial or detrimental? Like what we would gain from setting this up and going forth with it, would it be worth any kind of reputation hit we would take? It's like, oh, if everybody else is doing it, what are they going to get mad at us for?
Well, you bring up a great point. Like the whole idea is that we can't fall back on the fact that, well, that's not really the Canadian way. Because what's happening to us is that your time couldn't have been any better. I just finished a Substack article where I talked about Canada basically CSIS being our goalie, but we've got no one to move the puck up into the.
And you've got two goalies on the podcast here.
There you go. And they both work for CSIS. So what does that tell you? But
CSIS has a great goaltending.
Right, you guys are awesome. Yeah, keep playing the seniors league. You're doing a great job. So really, what we're talking
says the guy that can't tie skates.
There's a huge difference between national security collection and intelligence collection for the prosperity of our military, our political environment, and our economy. And this is what a lot of people, even intelligence professionals, don't get their head wrapped around this. These are two very different types of intelligence collection. When you are collecting for the purposes of national security, you're focusing on foreign interference, sabotage, espionage, and terrorism. When you are collecting for the purposes of foreign intelligence to improve the prosperity of your economy, your military, and your political situation in the world, that is totally different.
Yep.
You are trying to get assets within other governments that will facilitate what you need to happen. You are trying to get assets in other countries and other companies that will facilitate for Canada,
including allied countries.
What we have difficulty with not understanding that everyone else is doing it to us, and we're really upset about it, which is the Canadian way. Oh, I'm mad. I don't like that you're doing this. Everyone else in the world is saying this is the game. You don't want to play? That's fine, but don't complain when we keep scoring on you. Because you're not doing anything.
Canada's the original victimhood.
Right. You can be the best goalie in the world. But if you have no one else on the team that can bring the puck into the opponent's ice, forget it. Eventually, you're going to start losing the game. So I'll send you a copy of that Substack when I'm done this. But this is something that Canadians need to understand. And this is something that the government needs to understand. There is a huge difference between collecting intelligence for national security purposes and collecting intelligence from a clandestine organization that is about the prosperity of your country. Because guess what? National security is great. We need it. But if we don't have prosperity in the rest of the world and we kept relying on the United States, and we've seen where this has gone over the last, couple of months.
Big time. Yeah, good point.
We cannot continue to do this. This is a wake-up call for Canada, and we can't be behind the eight ball on this. Because if we lose this game, that's it. We're done.
So I really appreciate all of Neil's.
Boy, who woke Neil up?
Yeah, I know. And look at all the sports analogies we're talking about.
I'm just going to try to talk over you guys.
Oh
and
God.
I'm a goalie. Look, I'm a goalie.
Behind the eight ball, defense, goalies. Like, what is this?
He's so worked up.
I know. For a guy that doesn't do anything, he's got all these sports analogies.
One of the things, just as you were saying though, Neil, it's if any of you listen to like Dan Crenshaw, he's from Texas there, and he has his own podcast. He's in their government, and he works on the terrorism, or not terrorism, the cartel side of things. That's like kind of his big topic.
Well, in the States now, that's both. Cartels are terrorism in the States.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So, but one of the things that he talks about, and he was a former Navy SEAL, and he's like, well, the reason we have presence in other countries is to help keep the problem there before it gets over here, and keep the pressure on over there before it gets here. And I, that kind of resonated with me. And I tried to think, how would that translate into a law enforcement issue? So what I was thinking is, I would say, why don't we, if I got somebody here in Edmonton who gets some really good information that a big drug line is running from Mexico up through California and, up into Canada, why don't we send the person who has that info to go down to the US and work with one of their agencies there? Like, paying the guy his per diem and a few nights in a hotel is a lot cheaper than the millions we're going to spend on an investigation once all the drugs get up here. Like, why aren't we thinking how to put the pressure on, at the front rather than just sitting back?
So that does happen. And we've actually, the RCMP lost a member in Thailand. He was killed on duty quite a few years ago on that. So that does happen. But could we do a lot more? Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And after 9/11 is actually, that's kind of what the philosophy was to pursue Al-Qaeda in those other countries so they couldn't hit continental North America.
Mm-hmm.
And CSIS was part of that in Afghanistan, and that's all public knowledge, and some other places, and it works.
Yeah,
it does work.
So maybe the RCMP does it
when we move away from that,
but I don't know if we
that's
do.
Right. But again, the resources that Edmonton City would have to do that.
But that's what I'm saying.
Plus,
is
they have
before they come here.
The RCMP has the liaison officers overseas.
Yeah, I was going to say that too. Like, it doesn't mean you're not a part of the game. It just means you're at a different level at that game, right? Like, we talk about these gray zone tactics, and I know that Calvin Christie. We had Calvin Christie on our show. We had Sam Cooper on our show. What a lot of people don't understand is there is an overlap between intelligence, foreign interference, and criminality. And we're talking about human smuggling, we're talking about gun running, we're talking about drugs. All that stuff plays to try to weaken the economy and the political structure within Canada. Sabotage, all that stuff has a criminal aspect to it. So we need to be more proactive on the intelligence side so that we can prevent it, so that we can do these threat reduction measures that the service does have the authority to do. But if we did it in a clandestine way with a foreign human intelligence organization, it would be even more effective. The concern is, well, is Canada going to get involved in everyone else's politics now? Because we don't do that. We're not like that. No, this is not about getting involved in other people's politics. No. What it is about understanding the threats that are coming to us that we can stop before it hits the border. Because as a former CBSA officer, I know what it's like to try to identify, okay, well, this person might have a gun. These individuals are bringing in drugs. It's got a larger aspect than just what's happening on the streets. It's affecting the entire community, and it's affecting all of Canada. And this is where we have to shake our heads and go, we got to do something about this.
So Nathan, if I could just go back to the foreign intelligence for 1 second. So, everyone's aware of the Five Eyes relationship. It's the best intelligence club in history. So us, the Americans, the Brits, the New Zealanders, and the Australians, a lot of intelligence shared back and forth, very sensitive intelligence. Imagine, especially under the current U.S. administration, let's say there's a contract up for bid in Namibia, and there's a Canadian company and an American company in the bidding. You don't think that under this administration in the States, the Americans are going to do everything in their power to collect intelligence that would favor the American bid and undermine our... Of course they're doing that, but we don't do that because, well, we don't want to offend anybody. We don't want to be seen as aggressive. And as a consequence, for having our lunches being handed to us, even by our allies. So further to Neil's point, we gotta wake up, and smell the coffee and say that, okay, the world is the way the world is. Yeah, it'd be great if the world was more like Canada. The world needs more Canada, like the world needs more Margaret Atwood or whatever the hell that is. That'd be great, but it's not going to be that way tomorrow. And until we realize that, I think we're continually, to use Neil's analogy, we're behind the eight ball more and more because we're not looking out for our own interests.
Mm-hmm.
If you're not at the table, you're on the menu.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Good way to put it.
The all I was thinking too was just and kind of back to Al's point was, like Edmonton and the major municipal services might not have the budget to run liaisons all around the world in different things, but sending that one person away, like we don't do that at all. I know the RCMP has components that they do some of that stuff, but even then it's like, the DEA, I don't know how many times they've visited Edmonton since I was on the gang unit. Like they're up here all the time, talking to people, learning about things that are connected from here all the way down through Mexico, back overseas, over into Asia. And it's like, if we want to save some money because we only have the money and the resource to run like one big project in a year, say, why aren't we looking at new innovative ways, or at least innovative for us, but ways that other people look to kind of solve these problems and put the pressure somewhere else? So that's what kind of what I was thinking. But yeah, no, I think you guys make some really good points on that. So go ahead, Phil.
Well, the other thing is it's a money issue, right? I mean,
Hmm.
Al mentioned about the RCMP, and you mentioned Edmonton Police. Look, we don't fund our law enforcement, security intelligence the way we should. Whereas the Americans, I mean, they throw gazillions of dollars at this stuff. This is why when we worked for the service, there was always an agency person and an FBI person posted in Toronto at the consulate, and in Montreal at the consulate, and at the embassy in Ottawa. We don't always replicate that because it's just there's no money in the kitty to do that kind of thing. And part of it's because we don't take this thing serious enough. And let's not forget, Nathan, and you would appreciate this. We've been through 5 years of defund the police.
Yeah.
Post Floyd George, right? That everything police does is wrong.
Yep.
And same thing, one thing I always mention when you work in security intelligence, you're only as good as your last failure. So we had the arrest of these wankers in Quebec. That's a good news story. Imagine they hadn't arrested them and something had happened. Where was the RCMP? Where was CSIS? Where was the Sûreté de Québec? Why were these guys allowed to do this? So when I'm not whining here. I'm not complaining. I'm just saying it's a reality that when you work in security intelligence and law enforcement, you've always got to be right. You always have to have successes because people are going to blame you for the failures, but they won't fund you to have more successes. And they give into this knowledge that, it's not Canadian to have lots of law enforcement. It's not Canadian to have lots of military. It's not Canadian to have lots of security intelligence. And put on your big boy pants because this is the way the world works.
Yeah. No, I think you guys, make a lot of good points there. You got all the expertise. What do you say, 90 years combined?
Like I said, we're old,
there you go.
We are old. Old and experienced.
I'll throw my 12 in there. So you're at 100 now.
Woohoo! Oh, I didn't join us and it was over a century. Yes.
Yeah.
Century Club.
The Century Club.
The Century Club.
Just as we're coming up to the end of time here, because Phil gave us the heart out.
As Phil does.
Yeah. I just want to give you guys each time to just say, what you got going on, anything that you want people to check out. So where can they find you and your work?
Well, first of all, thanks a lot, Nathan, for having us on. But for me, I do a podcast every week called the Global Intelligence Weekly Wrap-Up, where I take intelligence stories from around the world, whether it's espionage, foreign interference, terrorism,
or something mixed up.
And I give insight and intelligence on how that affects your everyday and your day-to-day. And I think that's a really good opportunity for people to listen in and be caught up. Because one thing that I had an opportunity to do at the service was to provide that information to the government, and then the government made decisions. But unfortunately, sometimes that big wheel moves slowly. This is getting it to people as quickly as they possibly can to start making decisions, whether you're in business, whether you're in politics, whether you're a public servant. It's a good opportunity to do that. So that, and with the Global Intelligence Knowledge Network, those are a couple of places that you can check out to make sure that you stay safe and stay informed.
Cool.
And as much as I poke fun at Neil, it's a very good product. So I think that you should definitely check out Gickin. It's definitely worth reading.
It just got cold in hell. It just got cold in hell.
You're going to clip that 5 seconds and just keep playing it on repeat. It could be your phone, your ringtone. Phil, you want to go ahead?
That's funny.
Sure. So like Neil, I have a weekly podcast called Canadian Intelligence Day. It's my sister-in-law's idea because it was CIA for short. She thought it was cute. And I interview people from around the world. And usually it's breaking news or stories that are really important. I just interviewed a U of A professor on drug gangs and homelessness in Edmonton, which is really, I learned a lot of stuff that I never knew happened. Also run a podcast called Quick Hits, which is just me talking. And again, that's sort of topical stuff. Blogs and lots of book writing. So I have a book coming out this fall. Bit of a niche market. It's on the Fenian thread of the 1860s. It was kind of a labor of love.
Yep.
But I'm on the verge of signing a book contract for next year where I'm going to take a look at the quarter century since 9/11, what we're doing well, what we're doing not well, what we could do better in terms of national security, counter-espionage, counter-terrorism kind of thing. So like Neil, just trying to get the message out to people about this is what's happening and this is what it means. And hopefully that you see yourself kind of as an educator. There's some stuff you might want to think about. And based on somebody who worked at the coalface for 30 years. So it's I'll keep doing it as long as it keeps getting interesting. So far it keeps getting interesting.
Very cool. And Al?
Well, as you said at the start, Nathan, my company does the global risk and public safety consulting. But most of my time is spent now on volunteering with the RCMP Veterans Association and the Pillar Society, which is the CSIS association, and getting more and more involved on the mental health of first responders and military veterans. I think that's super, super important. And thanks for having us on, Nathan. This has been a blast.
Yeah, absolutely. I just want to say, it's so nice to have someone else to talk to. I stare at these guys once a week for like week after week after week, and it's so demoralizing.
It's the best part of your Friday, and you know it.
Thank you.
There goes the violins.
Yeah, I was just happy to get you guys on.
No, it was a great opportunity. Thanks, Nathan.
Yeah, I really appreciate it, and I mean, like, you know, Neil, this is your first time on the show, but I'm sure I'll have you back on, and you other guys have been on here before.
Oh God, don't do that. That'd be a mistake.
But you know what? I recommend people check out what you guys are putting out. It's very important. It's the education that's there. I'll say no one here is funded by any foreign entities, so you can trust what they're saying. But
that's right. No United Front workers were involved in the creation of Spies Like Us.
Yeah,
the
there you go.
Of our knowledge.
We're going to have to reciprocate too. We're going to have to reciprocate, Nathan. We're going to have you on our show next season.
Big time.
For sure.
Yep.
Yeah. At any point. So cool. Okay, we'll wrap it up there. Hang on the line for 2 seconds. We'll just say a quick goodbye offline. Hey everyone. Thanks for listening in and following along with the discussions. Be sure to click the follow or subscribe button on your respective listening platform. Also, check out the Quiet Professional on X and Instagram under TQP780. And most importantly, please share where you can. Everyone has a part to play in getting these education and information pieces out there, so pass it along. Thanks again.